I need that, but it doesn't hurt.
And we're good. Am I good? Yes, we're good.
I think so.
Okay.
Ah, there I am.
All right.
Damn.
So, what were we just talking about?
Episode 20?
Episode 20.
Your book.
Very exciting. Very exciting. And
Right.
I have my book, Integrity and Peace, Loving Your Neighbor and the Path of Truth. If it's the year 2072, hopefully it's still available on Amazon.com. You can get it there. As of today in 2022, it is not in Kindle yet, but it will be.
Wow,
awesome.
awesome.
It will be soon. And then by, I don't know, by 2072, maybe we'll have it in Audible too. That'll be fun.
So they can go to Amazon and search for it and buy it?
They can, yes. So if
order a soft...
or you can just
an
call
actual
me.
book.
You can just call me. Look me up on Facebook, and I will send you a copy, and then I would make more money than Amazon.
Oh, yes.
Not much more, but more money than Amazon. Okay, so we have something else very exciting. Here, let's put that up there, and then you can hit it. So we have a new screaming goat.
Because everyone needs a screaming goat. Not really sure what purpose it will serve, but we'll find out.
We'll find out. Maybe it's when we...
It will reveal itself.
So we have the Buddha Homer and the screaming goat here. So that's good. And we still need an image. We need the Maslow image. That's what we need. So
It's interesting. I actually saw an actor who looked like, I think the world is like converging on the Matrix, because there's an actor in the new Star Wars series, Andor,
okay,
who looks just like a depiction of someone in The Simpsons from the past. Like
Really?
they're the same. Like I don't know which came first or if The Simpsons knew, but I'm sure if you like went and found the clip or the episode with this character in it, you'd be like, they're the same thing.
Which character is it?
It's the guy who's like the spy.
Oh yeah.
Who's like the commander in that you don't realize it flips until the end of the whatever episode.
The most
Spoilers.
recent one. It just you just noticed, right? Yes, yeah.
It's like I'm like, who is this guy? I know this actor, and I'm like, no, wait, he was in the Simpsons episode.
So, did you notice in one of the earlier episodes of Andor the character there was a character, and he was also in or is in Ted Lasso.
Interesting.
And I saw
like a real actor. Or
yes, like the
interesting.
person himself. The actor, right? The actor that's in
that's crazy.
Andor is also in Ted Lasso.
Right on. I did not notice that.
And we were watching it. It was one of the earlier ones in Andor, so I'm going to say maybe one or two even. I mean, it was early.
Yeah, I barely even remember.
And the way the guy moved,
the
way he
mannerisms.
moved, I was like,
cool.
That's just like, and it's Jamie's father in Ted Lasso.
Interesting. Oh.
And he was in it, and it was him.
I
can't think of his name, but so that was interesting.
Yeah.
And
in the most recent episode, Mon Mothma. I don't know if everybody got that, but that was a character in, I want to say, A New Hope, like episode 4. She's slightly older, which I didn't realize. That put it all in perspective. That Andor takes place like, I don't know, 5-10 years before.
Right. Well, it's building up to Rogue One.
Oh, that's
right. That's it, because he's
the
main
same time.
Andor,
that's right.
Cassian Andor, right? Cassian Andor.
Yeah,
Is that his name?
yeah,
Cassian.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He is the guy in Rogue One.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is it the same actor?
Oh yeah. Right. So that's what.
See, there's too much in the Star Wars canon. It's overwhelming.
That's what we're building up to. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So we got to be within 5 probably. Maybe less even.
Cool.
Really, depending on
because Rogue One was like right before.
Right before, right.
I like how it's almost like the fashions. Like their helmets and their hats and their suits are like 78, 7 vintage. Like.
Right.
Updated.
Yeah. I was thinking too, it was interesting. It was probably the first time they've had water, but they were literally swimming in a Star Wars episode.
Yeah, like in Down Deep. When they went into the snuck in.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting. And then there was another thing that somebody did in a Star Wars, and it was like I can't remember if it was a saying or like just a dialectical thing. Anyway, it's something where I was like, that's kind of a little more precise. Like, would that be in the galaxy? You know?
Oh, yeah. Well,
whatever. It was just kind of interesting. And of course, it's all in English, you know, for us.
well, yeah. Well, it's like so I knew this. It's funny. This has come up twice in a week. I knew that one of the first like people who influenced my career path was a ichthyologist. He was a fish geneticist named Bruce Turner, and it's a long story, but he was like one of the sort of builders of the aquarium hobby in the U.S. He lived in Brooklyn when that was like where all the fish were coming in, and he like became a hobbyist as a kid. His pictures are in like the hobbyist magazines that I saw. Anyway, he had a son and ended up working for me at a pet store years ago, which is even crazier. What's the point of all this? Oh God,
the ichthyologist.
I'm totally gonna freeze.
So I was saying what like fits in. It was something else came up from Star Wars or Andor.
Oh yeah. So his son ended up working with me, John, and I, which was interesting. I sort of hired John as a favor to Bruce, and he said, his dad's the first PhD I really knew, and he's like, yeah, having a dad who's a PhD ichthyologist is kind of a mixed blessing, because when I first saw Star Wars with him in the theater, my dad's going, there's no oxygen in space. Explosions don't make fire. You can't hear it. He's like, he ruined the movie for me,
Right. Right.
Sorry, that was like a huge tangent.
Right. Yeah, that's
But
awesome.
for some reason, I thought of that guy, Bruce Turner, like earlier this week.
So so we could say probably that Bruce Turner was a successful.
Well, that's really, maybe that is the best, because at the time I thought he was.
Oh,
Looking
right.
back on it,
Oh,
I'm
right.
not so sure.
Yes, yeah. So
I would argue that,
yeah, okay. So
against that.
our reference there is that at the end of the last episode, we said we would discuss the definition of success and what is success, blah blah blah. So let's just take that guy. When you knew him, you thought he was successful.
Yeah, in the context of me going, well, I want to go to college. This is a guy who went to college a lot, as much as you possibly can. Presumably, he had the best job you can get. He's a academic professor at a university with his own office and freedom to do whatever that means. I didn't even really know what it meant, so how could I really know what it was? You know what I mean? I saw him and perceived whatever it was that he had was success, and then proceeded to sort of fill in the blanks of what I thought that meant, without any like real data.
Right.
And now, I see. I got what he had, and I realized that was so not success that I gave it up.
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? Yeah, so the definition of success, so actually, like as far as online, literally, the definition of success, number one, the accomplishment of an aim or purpose, the attainment of fame, wealth, or social status, a person or thing that achieves desired aims or attains fame, wealth, blah, blah, blah. Archaic, the good or bad outcome of an undertaking.
Oh.
I don't really think that's archaic, though.
No, win or lose.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's, our definition of success, and of course we've talked about this 95 times now, but just to go over one more time, anytime there's a word, that is the signifier. The word is the signifier. So success is the signifier. The referent is what it actually is. And of course, success doesn't exist. So everybody's signified in their head is different.
Right. No,
right. The exact definition. So when we say success, what is a success? It's on different scales. So it exists in the subjective world. It exists in our interiors, as we've talked about, but it doesn't just exist where we can definitively say, even though this is other things, the screaming goat, that is the screaming goat, and that is what we're talking about. Success doesn't exist in that form, right? Where it's the definitive thing. And so I think, on a lot of people, this was something for me that happened very early, where, and I say early, I'm talking right out of college early, not necessarily before that, but maybe there was inclinations of that in high school, but definitely right out of college, where I realized, like, wait a minute, do I want
Yeah,
to work 40 hours a week, or do I want to have to go to this job all the time? And, do I want to be locked into that? And, so then when I found, became acquainted with the Appalachian Trail, it was like, oh, I want to go do this. And then, like, I would, at the same time be still like I was right out of school, so people are like, when are you going to get a job? And when are you getting a real job? Which, that's just ridiculous.
That could be a whole episode.
Yes, right. Real job. But so, my definition of success right away was changing. And
Well, yeah, you were defining it for yourself,
Right.
not accepting whatever definition was presented.
yeah, right. That it wasn't just, to me, life was clearly more than just money and the house and the car and do I have a Louis Vuitton bag? Do guys typically, not to be sexist, but do guys typically have Louis Vuitton bags?
no
My
idea.
wife is in a contest. It's not a contest. It's a drawing. A drawing.
Oh, yeah,
not a
yeah,
contest.
yeah,
A drawing. And the prize is a Louis Vuitton bag,
Cool.
which we're
Epic.
hoping to win so we can sell.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, that's really what you just said is really interesting, because it's like your sort of dilemma of, do I accept this definition of success? You're talking about, on the surface, it's the job, but what's driving you is you don't want what comes with that, right? So, is success the job, or is it the money that comes perceived to become with the job, or the comfort? You know what I mean? So that's where I think a lot of people get stuck. They define success as wealth or power, whatever
Right.
whatever the definition said. I was shocked that there's only 3 things in that definition. It was like wealth, power, and status, or something. Which
Yeah,
is
and this one, we have attainment of fame, wealth, or social status. Yeah,
fame.
accomplish-
Well, I mean, think about that. How empty. And really, aren't those just sort of like proxy measures for what you really want, or what you would consider success to be? Because isn't, like, in your example, the good job, well, that means I don't have to worry about buying stuff. That's really what that means, right? It's not even money, right? Or maybe that's just me. Maybe that's me interpreting it in my own particular way. But
Well, yeah, well, I mean, so God, that's right.
We're so
that's
far
totally
away
loaded
from-
because the good job. So my degree is in elementary education. So when I was right out of college and I was working in a restaurant making
more money than
good money as far as compared to a teacher,
yeah,
honestly, at least, and certainly a first year
probably even
teacher.
in today's
Yeah.
dollars.
And so I was making good money comparably. So if we're comparing
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
that was
yeah.
good to good.
Right.
Okay. Now, honestly, at that time, I did not have a retirement
Yeah,
plan
right.
as in working in
pension,
a restaurant, so
yeah,
I didn't have that. But also then my stress level was way less. And now, I mean, looking at it now, and I see teachers, people that come to my gym, teachers, medical professions are the most miserable, stressed out, and they're not miserable people. I'm not saying
Yeah,
they are
their
miserable
jobs
people.
suck.
They're miserable with their job. They are stressed out. They're are taxed beyond their what they need to be taxed, like not financial tax, that too,
right.
but they physically and mentally and their job requirements. It's a bunch of BS, and I think it's like somewhere along the line. I just saw this meme the other day, and this kind of sums it up. Western cultures believe we must be alive for a purpose, to work, to make money. Some indigenous cultures believe we're alive just as nature is alive. To be here, to be beautiful and strange, we don't need to achieve anything to be valid in our humanness.
Right. Well, yeah.
Now, and this is where I talk. This is chop wood, carry water.
Yeah.
That you still need to meet your basic needs, as does anything in the wilderness or nature.
Well, and that's interesting because people would say that if you don't have this work ethic or drive to find the same success everybody else has, then you're lazy. By default, if you're not pursuing success, and able to discuss this, at social events with people, what do you do? You're pursuing success. If you don't do that, then you're a lazy sack of crap.
Yeah, that's such a common question too. We're like, what do you do?
Yeah, I told you the story when we went to Belize, right? And we met this couple, and we both were like, I hate that question. And he's like, I know. I don't even know why I asked you that. He's like, what we should say is, what do you love to do?
Yeah.
Just one word, or 2 words.
Yeah.
But something, you almost outlined the definition, the difference between guilt or and shame, right? It's like, if success is about who you are, that has nothing to do with who you are, right? It's something that you did. Just like, you feel guilty or bad for something that you did, you feel shame because you think what you did defines you. And so you get this idea that success defines your meaning. And I mean, even at like 10 years old, I think I would have been like, you're an idiot if you think that, but yet that's the status quo.
Well, and I think that's probably driving a lot of the Great Resignation now, right? And
I hope so.
So it's so common. I hear this all the time. Well, people just don't want to work today. Yeah, well,
I wrote an article on Medium about that. Like, I forget what the title is, but yeah,
people don't want to work today.
Yeah, don't tell me you don't want to work. Like, really?
Well, and right, because who really wants to work? I mean, really, it's like, and everybody.
Well, I think everybody. They don't want to work with the job you're talking about, like where you have to like get this job and somebody hires you. But I think everybody wants to chop wood and carry water.
Yeah.
I mean, most people. I really don't believe people are lazy and evil.
Right.
I think if you sit around long enough on the couch and don't do anything, you're kind of like bored.
You would get bored, right? If you're and what you have to remember here is your basic needs are not getting met. And when your basic needs are not getting met, you're going to have an intrinsic motivation.
Right, exactly.
To get things done.
And you could call that, I mean, by the physics definition, that is work.
Yeah. And right. And so, and it's funny because we've gone away now. And of course, big cities are different. But I mean, so many people have like lawns that could be the garden.
God, don't even.
Right? And we mow all this grass. And I'm not saying you shouldn't even have like some lawn around your yard, because it certainly is nice to have like some nice, just kind of clean cut area, to enjoy yourself in. But what if the norm was just having
whatever
a
weeds,
garden, right?
And that's a movement. I mean, people do that. I've thought about doing it here because I hate mowing so much.
Right.
Just mow paths where I would walk from.
And paths through grass are beautiful, dude. It's just beautiful,
especially the problem is anymore. Like if you just let the yard go, it turns into brambles and uncomfortable and unaesthetically appealing weeds. So you almost have to like plant the native clover or whatever it is that would grow there. So there's a lot of work required.
Right.
You can't just let it go. I've learned that lesson. If you let it go, it turns into a mess.
Right. Yeah. Right. And then you have to get it going.
Because it's been so domesticated.
Clean it. Right. Yes. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, then you have to get goats.
Yeah, you got to get
goats. Don't do it.
Right, and that's the thing. That's it. We do have to put in work to change things back, and then there's also, I mean, just a learning curve there of what does that mean.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because as you said, it's like you can't just let it go because it's been so domesticated. It's overrun with things that are not going to be helpful.
We were hiking in a forest one time with Claiborne Woodall, who's a forester, fire ecologist. He knows about forests, and I was like, "This is different." It was the first time we've been on the trail, and he's like, "Yeah, this area hasn't been cut for 100 years, and what you're seeing is the native plants that you would see in a forest that would be here normally. What you're used to seeing is the weeds and invasive species that come in after you cut a forest.
After a clear cut
and
forest.
It never occurred to me. As much time as I've spent in the woods and sort of working in nature, I never realized that you did get these weird changes, which is, I think, not tangential because, how you define and recognize success, you have to take all of that into context, right? You have to take into context what's changed and what work you have to do. There's something in there that makes it fit into the forest story so that it's not tangential. Those got punishment. Punish myself for being too tangential.
So, just thinking about like the idea of the success, like what is success and like what our jobs here, not our jobs here are. Well, so we have jobs. And let's go with it like this way, like the are versus should thing. Okay.
Yeah,
We're
totally.
so conditioned to think that the norm is a clear-cut lawn,
Yeah, right. That we just do it.
that we just do it.
Yeah,
And
I'm
most
thinking
people then
about it.
don't even question it. And it's like we do like a lot of things. It's like if we're raised in a church, then we think like our kid in a Christian church that, oh, well, the kid needs to be baptized, or like in the Roman Catholic Church, like the kid is typically baptized, or the Greek Orthodox Church, the kid is typically baptized. And people will do that and not even question like what they're really doing. And maybe they've stopped going to church themselves and they're not active. And I'm not, and again, I think anybody that's watched any more than one of these shows knows I'm not disrespecting that directly. I think there is something valuable in the ceremony of church, with the idea of it in theory, right?
Well, it's the same idea, though, that somebody didn't think about it. They were given something and they just went, oh,
Right.
this is real, or this is truth, or this is reality, or this is success, or this is what I do, without even thinking about it. And isn't that, I always think back like, okay, 200,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, was this any different?
Right.
Was it? And I have to believe that like walkabouts and, manhood rituals and whatever, at some point in people's lives, you go, okay, you've been presented with a bunch of stuff, but now you're 13 or 18 or 12 or 8 or 20, and now it's time for you to make a decision about these things.
Right.
What do you think? Go through and take the inventory of all the things that you've done and go, and decide for yourself.
Right.
Like, isn't that supposed to be part of, and we just like, going up to the 50,000 foot view, like, isn't that what happened? Like I always say, what happened? What went wrong? Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yeah, it was a
somebody's-
natural progression,
Yeah, well,
right,
and
it
we
was
just
a-
don't do it anymore.
a stage of development. Yeah,
We
yeah.
just get fed. And I think presumably it's like technology. We think that that's going to like improve the success of the human species by learning. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, I learned all this stuff and I'm just going to give it to you. And then, you can stand on my shoulders and then we'll make this great big ladder. And like in 20 generations, we'll make an iPhone. But, there's some truth to that. But, without the questioning thing, if that's like effectively filtered out of society, then don't we just become clones?
Yeah. Well, phew, yeah.
I know,
right.
that's a lot. There's a lot of trails in there.
Well, and I think though, okay, so that's what, when you reach the internalization level of attachment that we've talked about, right?
Yeah.
That is what you want. Internalization on the way to fanatical, right? Level of
Yeah,
attachment
yeah.
on the broad
Yeah.
scale. We don't have that we have the 4 grooves. We need the 5. Okay, that's next.
Yeah,
So
right.
Maslow and the 5 levels of attachment. So the 5 levels of attachment from Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. go authentic level. That's kind of in theory what you would come in with, right? Before any
Right, like a child,
any conditioning,
a baby. Yeah.
any conditioning has happened, right? And then there's the preference level. I always say I like
like
raspberries over strawberries. Very simple. Identity level. I identify myself as a Cleveland
I
fan.
am a raspberry eater.
Yes.
I'm a
raspberry
non-strawberry eater.
Yes. And then internalization level, right? I take my strawberries, people
Yeah.
that eat strawberries personally.
Yeah.
How do you like that?
Yeah,
And then
right.
The fanatical level.
Right.
Okay. Now, of course, then you can break anything
Kill
into
all
way more.
non-strawberry lovers.
Okay. So as we progress through this, though, as you get closer to what I'm going to say, this fanatical side, closer to the fanatical, the extreme side, as you get closer to the extreme side of your thing, you kind of do want clones.
Yeah, right.
Because
so
you-
you're more predictable.
Yep.
You're always,
You want the people to do the exact same thing.
But those levels of attachment are more like, it's the stairway to hell. Like they're not, I don't know. You think about progressing through like Maslow's hierarchy, you're going up this ladder to prove yourself. I never really, yeah.
Oh,
Those
dude,
levels are
I
like
love that image.
Making you worse.
That's the stairway to hell. Forget stairway to heaven.
But it's also the stairway to things that society of today wants, like We want clones. We want little minions that we can predict their behavior of, that we know how they're going to vote. We know they're going to earn their taxes. They know they're going to do. That's what you want from sort of a capitalism government level, right? So it depends on your definition of success.
Well, and there's something with that where the what's the saying? Familiarity breeds content.
Something like that.
Or contempt.
Yeah.
Contempt.
That's where you don't care, right? Or apathy. Is that right?
Okay, yes. Okay, that's what the saying is, right? It's not yet. Okay, and so, but it's interesting because there's a degree of comfort in that familiarity that we like. And I always think about all the exits on an interstate, right? Where it's
so
you're like, oh, there's a Starbucks, there's a McDonald's, there's a Sheetz gas station in this area, there's Sheetz, whatever. There's things
right?
And then you feel safe there because you know those names,
right?
You know those names and stuff. And actually, in a sense, I mean, every area, to a degree, obviously, is going to have its, some areas are going to be significantly safer, of course. Some are going to be significantly more dangerous in that. But most areas are going to have a mix of that's a safe area. That area has some problems for whatever reason, which, we could get into. But when you become familiar with it, then in that familiarity, you feel safer. So if you go into, instead of seeing a Starbucks, you just saw, Joe's coffee shop. You're like, well, I don't know Joe. You know what I mean, I'm not going there. And of course,
if I Instagram a picture of this latte, will people like me or not?
So, but and so we get comfort in that, and then I think that's goes for the people. You want the people to be the same too. So, like you said, to know what to expect. But that's the problem then. And then as we've done that, and I mean, I think our school system is to no individual's fault. Right. It's just a collective.
Right. Well, and to know, complaining about something for just the sake of complaining, it's just pointing it out.
Yeah.
We don't. It's not being negative. It's just saying I'm not going to come in and say our school systems are wonderful.
Right. And it's and so for tons of reasons, school systems are still good. For tons of reasons.
Yeah. Sure.
Right.
Sure.
But then we've why don't we teach more, gardening, farming, that sort of thing.
Meditation.
And,
mindfulness.
Yeah. Mindful. And, and making it, more, so people feel, so people are provided the opportunity to learn the things they need for survival. And it's not just everything is only math, reading, science, blah, blah, blah. And all that, of course, is important. But we've lost that. And then we kind of belittle that, or we eliminate these things home ec programs in schools and music programs and even gym. These things, art programs, this is what we eliminate.
Well, and this is what, so when I worked a job for... that's a long story. A job I worked one time, there was a element of the research we were doing called adaptive management, where you do these things like the scientific method. It's sort of like at the end of the scientific method, you have this thing, and I never heard the phrase before, but it's something we all do, but I like the term adaptive management, where you make all these rules and you do all these things and you go, okay, we should drive 55 on this highway. Got it. And we're in this mindset in the world where that's the end of it. Right? Usually that's the end of it. We make a decision and we go, this town is going to observe pro-life, and we're going to put a sign up that says we're a pro-life town. That's the end of it. Adaptive management simply says, no. At the end of anything where we used to say we're done, we're going to insert this thing that we do now, where every so often we go back and ask the question again. Did this do what we wanted it to do? Does this have the effect? Are there some other sort of consequences arising from this decision that we hadn't considered before that are actually negative? You go back and assess the way you do things. That and when I learned about this in this job, my first thought was, well, that's dumb. And then I thought, in what other time do we ever do this? Except maybe for our own personal growth or something like that. Or maybe if you're an athlete and you're trying to learn something, or a musician, you go, I'm stuck. What can I do? And maybe I'll ask some questions again about how I hold my guitar pick or how I stand on the starting blocks. But we don't do that. We go, this is success. This is the end of it. This is democracy. This is what it looks like. This is the speed limit. This is what it is. We rarely go back and revisit those questions. Like kind of like you said, maybe out of laziness, but I think mostly it's out of the assumption that it alleviated whatever fears we had. We made a decision, and it works. We don't have to do that anymore. But that's absurd. Why would we be right every time? Why would we not need to do this? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we actually do this adaptive management thing in other ways, but I don't see much of it.
Yeah, well, I imagine, so probably the situation is all the times we do an adaptive management thing, we do, and all the times we don't, we don't. Right?
Well, yeah,
you know
right.
I mean?
Well, like maybe elections are supposed to be an example of an adaptive management, but we just don't.
Well, I mean, I think the speed limit one is a good example, right? Where a lot of roads have increased, right?
Yeah, they went up.
An
from
interstate was probably
70,
55. When we were kids, interstate was 55.
You know that book, right? No, Unsafe at Any Speed. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we can get into that.
Okay.
Why we have speed limits? It's been our lifetime.
Okay.
So many people were dying in cars on the highways in the 60s. And think about it. They were these giant, 500 horsepower, no seatbelt death machines. And Ralph Nader wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed that just basically went, look at all of the traffic fatalities. Do we really want to die like this? And the book, he didn't go to the government and try to change the law. He wrote a book and said, you guys figure it out. And we all went, whoa, what could we do to fix this problem? Seatbelts and speed limits. Anyway,
so there wasn't speed limits?
No, there were suggestions. It wasn't this widespread. I don't know all the details of what things were like in the 50s versus.
And of course,
that book is marked to change car technology, highway systems, all of it.
Yeah, and of course we have at least adapted in that way, where a lot of areas then you have can drive faster.
Right, because it was absurd, and then like you said. We actually have now gone, 55, maybe we can go a little faster than that.
Right.
Now that we have airbags.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a good example.
But, and at the same time, like in terms of so there would be like the collective adaptive management, but then an individual at any time. It's like, okay, so like in the U.S., you drive on the right side of the road. But if there's something in the road that you're about to hit and you don't need to stop and get over, you can get over into the left lane. Like you make decisions like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I think like that's the thing. It's like we get so set in, and this is where the problems with religion and government happen, because it's like we think there's going to be a rule.
Oh yeah.
That it's like you got to do the rule right. To be right, and you got to do this, but it's like, well, yeah, but what if I need to do this?
Well, it's so funny how the same individual person can be, and this is something that's gotten me forever, can be so steadfast in obeying this particular rule and observe it as having zero flexibility. Mm-hmm. If you are gay, you die. That's the rule. But yet they will see somebody in the road and go, oh, even though this is a double yellow line that I'm not supposed to go across, I have no problem going across it so that I don't hit this person. Right. Like, how can the same person observe that sort of, blatant flexibility and the lack of it? This other thing, right? Like, it's so funny that the same person can. Yeah, that just drives me nuts.
Yeah, the hypocrisy.
What we choose to attach to.
Right.
Like, you're like, no, this is more important than this or whatever.
Right. Well, so that's, I think, the thing that all of this we have to just always go back to is to talk that, most things, maybe all things in themselves are not good or bad. That's not an inherent thing. Yeah. And we have been conditioned to make decisions on most of that. And you may feel as though that you're born into your religion or your political party even, but that was because of your parents, wherever they got it from. So you don't, I mean, we could obviously keep going back and back and back, right? But at some point, you're right. So it's from your parents. And then this is where those stages of growth and development and ceremonies to do it go, okay, well, you're this.
Yeah, now it's your turn.
Do you want to still be this? And we don't question that. And that's like, you got to question. I was just thinking, I was watching Ted Lasso yesterday and the be curious, not judgmental line, and it's just like, you got to be curious and you have to question the things. And sometimes I think you're going to question things and go, oh, Yeah, I do agree with that.
Yeah. No,
okay. Good.
But this gets at something. It's so funny that we're talking about success, but it really is like this bigger thing, and part of that is something I think we've talked about in multiple episodes, is that there's, and I'll preface this with saying, like, call it global values. Like you just said something to the effect of, but you have to. Like, yeah, I think as a human being, I would agree, we have to make or consider what we've been taught. You know, what do they call that? Like when we were in school, it was like critical thinking. Mm-hmm. We need to teach you critical thinking skills. So basically that just means to question the knowledge that you already have. And then in an adaptive management sense, question the knowledge that the decisions that you've made for yourself. I would say, yes, as human beings, we have to do that. And then I'll also say that what I see in the world and all the problems, I think the issues that we talk about, stem from not doing that. Stem from a novel, or maybe not novel, 5,000-10,000-year-old pattern of trying to make us not do that. Become these clones, become these sort of non-thinking zombie Wall-E type whatever. It's like, for whatever this machine, the Matrix is, it's almost trying to teach us to not ever think for ourselves. And that's all we're basically talking about. But the point I'm trying to make is I do believe in this like global value system, like a 10 commandments. And commandment 1 would be, you have to make your own decisions. And then commandment 2 would be, whatever decisions you think you've made, you need to continuously think about those in an adaptive management way, because you could change your mind. You could be wrong, new information. You know, it's like the scientific method for being a human being. And I think if we did that, we would reach like a global consensus at some level. And the problem is we don't have that. Again, I don't think we should have a global consensus or a global value system just because it's cool. But I think that actually would, it would make the earth a village, right? And fix everything. I don't know.
And so I think, right. So I think we do have it to a degree, but we just, because
we know what it is.
It's not cloaked in the exact same language and under the religion.
Like you say, it's all the same. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's hidden, right? And so you can immediately see, this is immediately then where hypocrisy can come in, right? Because we miss the thing from the other direction, right? Or make the decision.
Right.
And so that's the problem. So I think we do. And I think, so obviously like a big one. So, okay, like the cloak hiding, the mask, my Scooby-Doo. The mask. The mask hiding the values, the global value system is the 10 Commandments. That's the mask.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
Just
we're looking at the
off,
words.
And then called global values. Now, then within the 10 Commandments, literally, of what the 10 Commandments are, and it would say, thou shalt,
well, don't covet your neighbor's wife. I always thought that was oddly specific.
So it's oddly specific. I mean, it's also kind of like the difference. So there, really, what are we looking at? Like, envy, like being envious. We've talked about this before. How would that go? Envious is okay because
I get them mixed up. Yeah,
envy helps you.
I can't remember.
Envy helps you want to do the next thing possible. Like, oh man, like I want to be able to do what that person's done. I am envious of your ability as a musician. And I want to learn that.
As opposed to jealous.
As opposed to jealess, which jealousy is just, it's just
I'm
like,
mad at you.
Mad at you
because you have
because
something
you have something.
Right.
I'm mad at you because you have money that I don't, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's no motivation for it. So there would be those things where then again, so the 10 Commandments is one mask, one cloak hiding the global values underneath. And then even with that, there would be other masks within where the word God for somebody that is in India might go, well, why is it got to be the word God? Well, it's not. That's not what it is. What are we really talking about? So then we could get into, whether maybe we should try to make a global values There we go. Paul and Chris's 10 global.
Well, I mean,
global
I keep,
values. How
I
many
keep,
we need?
I
Global
keep
values.
like, well, and I guess you're talking about like release the message, right? You're trying to release the message of what's behind all these
Yes,
masks,
yes.
and that if we could do that, then we would see that we actually agree.
Yeah, yeah,
on
and
what's important.
I think we agree on a lot more things, and then what we realize, and that's what we have to do. We have to release the message. We remove these labels. So the 10 Commandments is the label, right? That is hiding the truth of it underneath. And then can we agree on it? And I think let's do that for show 21. We'll talk about global values. What are some things that could be? And that's a perfect one then if somebody ever wants to chime in, like, well, I think this should be a global value. You know? And they don't have to be 10. It might be 3. It might be 5. It might be 25.
Well, I mean, I get to the point. I've never really tried to push past this point where I get stuck because I'm not like a libertarian, but I don't want to tell people how to feel. You know, there's this like, I'm sure there are people out there, and I don't know the answer to this dilemma, that would argue with the definition of success and say, no, like, look at me and go, you don't work, you know, or you don't have a career, you don't have any power. It's like my buddy Josh. So my buddy Josh took a path where he makes a ton of money. He got into apps and all that stuff way before anybody else. He sold businesses. He runs businesses. He just, you know, I get the impression that he's just has more money than he literally knows what to do with, and the stress to go along with it. But that's the lifestyle that he lives. And he has a garage full of fancy cars. And we were talking about cars because when we met, you know, when we were 18, we both kind of had that boyish lust after a Porsche or whatever. Now he has 5, and he's coming to me going, oh, well, just get one of these. They're only like 20 grand. And I'm like, you don't understand. I don't have a job. I don't have, I have access to 20 grand maybe, but it's not really my money. And we got into this discussion, and I think he just sort of looked at me with like this pity, like, wow, you don't have the power that I have. And so if we got into a discussion about success, I don't think I'm going to move him from his basis that money, power, status are it. We're never going to get to a global values thing, right? So the question that all that is does a set of global values exist that pertain to all humans now and forever and before?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
I mean, I think there's going to be so it's probably not that steep of a list, real or deep of a list.
I wouldn't think it'd be like 3. You know?
And so it's probably pretty short, but we probably can agree on some things more. But you know so then it would come into like where does happiness come into the equation?
Well,
because
definition of success.
Well, I mean, so yeah, so first of all, you can't be happy literally every second, because then you stop becoming anything else. Yeah, it's like what we talk about, and what I talk about in my book is like, if you're in heaven and have literally everything, if your heaven is having literally every thing you want, every pleasure you want, every joy you want, every person you want with you always, it's like, all right. I mean, it's like I love a lot of my relatives that have passed away, but
well, and I would argue that can't even exist.
Well, it can't.
So happiness, like as you approach that point, it just disappears.
Yeah, right. Okay. So that's my point, though. Is you can't be happy all the time.
Yeah, sure.
Because without the opposites, you don't know that. But also, I always think about this. Like, if I think about passing away, I always say to Shelley, like, well, I just want you to go be happy. Right. Now, part of that happiness for her is probably going to be like her security and of like can meet my basic needs.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Right, the meeting of basic needs and security. Which of course, I mean, I think she'd be totally fine doing herself anyways. But like if you know, for no reason, if your happiness is rooted, like it's like she doesn't need to wait to be with me in heaven, to have a relationship, if that's all possible. Even I'm just saying, like, if that was what, you know, I mean, you don't have to wait for me to be. Now, if you don't want to be with somebody, well, then don't be with somebody.
Right.
But if you want to be with, I don't care if it's the week after I die. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, right. There's not.
I don't.
There's no
you know what I
strict
mean? Like,
rule
just go.
governing.
If that's what, if the thing happens, that it's there, you know. So I guess my question is, you know, for most people, do cars, do big houses, do yachts, bring them to like a true happiness? And so this is where I get into my book with like true freedom and
Yeah, right,
inner peace?
right.
Do you really have freedom and inner peace? And having those don't mean you're not still going to chop wood, carry water, and having struggles within the chop wood, carry water part, right? But it's like you have like just like the true inner peace, and you realize what your freedom is. Freedom, true freedom, is not just
Being able to buy any car you want.
well, buying any car you want or saying anything you want.
Yeah.
Like, and just being an idiot. Like, 'cause that's not freedom. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's like, you know, are you helping the cause here? Like, true freedom is not needing to belittle anybody in any way. Like, ever. Why?
Yeah, even that, I mean, I can just hear the arguments for like who's the definitive authority on what freedom,
Yeah.
how you define freedom,
Yeah. Well, right. And because that goes into.
or
yeah.
success,
Yep. Right.
or
yep.
value,
Yep. And that goes in. So
or happy.
So the freedom comes when you realize that, well, it's in everybody's mind.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, right.
That's
right.
where
like,
the freedom is. It's like, oh,
yeah, and I mean, I could take Josh and we could
Yeah.
pursue that example.
I mean, would you say
forever,
that
but-
person's happy? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I would
Content
say
and happy,
that
or-
he struggles with similar mental, psychological things as I do, but I would consider like it, and of course this is my bias and it's impossible to, separate these things, but I would argue that I've made a lot of mental progress on problems or issues that he still struggles with
Sure.
on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. So there's a trade-off. He's wealthy in one way
Yeah.
and I'm wealthy in another way. I say I struggle with wanting the things. I'm okay without a Porsche. I don't
Yep.
really cry myself to sleep at night because I'm not successful the way he measures it. But I don't know what it's like from the other angle. Like, does he envy my level of peace?
Right.
I
Right.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would think so.
Well, and it's
but I don't
because
really
those
know.
tangible items is easier to see what somebody has.
Yeah,
right.
and,
You know what I mean?
but this is a great example because one could argue all day long, like if you think freedom means you can go punch somebody or drive your motorcycle loudly, and you believe that, then maybe that's what freedom means. I don't think that's true. Again, that's why this idea of global values. There's a global definition of these things, just like there's a global definition of truth that supersedes any of it. Like I believe that.
Yeah.
If
well,
you don't get it, then you don't get it.
so because that's where then karma is going to come into play, and there's going to be different levels of karma. I think we've talked a little bit about that, right? There's going to be like an immediate karma reaction, like a one-to-one kind of thing. Like if you're free to punch somebody in the face, they might punch you in the face back, or worse. Or I mean, in a society, then it's assault, and you're facing consequences. And then societally, all of our actions, I mean, this is what like global warming actually is, right? It's like all of our actions, it's a cumulative thing. And it's like nobody is purposely trying. Is anybody purposely, so I said nobody is, but is anybody purposely trying to destroy the environment?
Well, I think about this a lot with coal.
Yeah.
Because I think, yes, at some point, the robber barons of that era had to go, ooh, that doesn't look right. And they, somewhere along the line, made a semi-conscious decision to continue to pursue their profits and ignore something. Now, I don't know that this something was the revelation that in the year 2100, the Earth would be 5 degrees warmer or whatever. But they knew better, somewhere that because we all have, no matter how bad a person is, we all have that extrasensory nudge that something's not right.
But
it had to come up.
But somehow, and this is where I talk about everybody always thinks they're right, because somehow they rationalized or justified their actions.
Exactly.
To
They
the
missed an
point of
opportunity.
like it's like, well, yeah, but this provides for this, and people live longer because of this. And
yeah,
blah,
how
blah,
could
blah,
you
but
possibly go, I'm going to have a coffin made for me out of gold. And then I'm going to put that inside of another coffin. And while these guys are out here working 20 hours a day lifting rocks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but
Do people know they can't eat gold?
it had to occur to somebody that they were way better off than somebody else.
Yeah.
And they're, nobody's that ignorant. You know, nobody's that oblivious to these differences. I mean, and that's why, I mean, if there's any evil in humans, that's where it comes in, is being able to go, that person is suffering, but I don't care.
Right. Being able, but I guess my argument on that would be, is, do we all though that? So I don't know off the top of my head where this sweatshirt was made, but I'm guessing it wasn't handmade in a, you know what I mean? And somebody, was it
somebody suffered.
Borderline? Yeah. So did somebody suffer for
totally.
this, too? And material wise, and what that all means. Yeah. And it's easy. I think that's where it gets into the complicated problems, that things are so complicated and so ginormous. This is what we really face societally, is these problems are so big and so deep. And then, of course, you have the feeling of like, well, what can I do? I can't do anything. And that's why it always comes back just to yourself.
Yeah. And I would argue that the problems are so big, but the original sin, if you will, isn't that complicated. And I think a great example is the fact that shirt and everything else that America has benefited from through the Industrial Revolution, probably going back to like the genocide that happened with Columbus and all that, is our energy blindness. We made a decision to go, if I bought this shirt for $10, then it cost me $10. And that's the whole sum of the cost. You don't see the people in the sweatshop. You don't see the coal being burned to run whatever machinery that they needed to make the shirt. You don't see all of that. And actually, it was never accounted for. It was just burned off as if it wasn't part of the equation. And the equation doesn't balance. And what we're seeing in climate change and loss of species and all that is the imbalance that we ignored because we were blind to it. Now the question is, like we were asking before, did I see it and then look away, or was I just inherently blind? Mm-hmm. And so that's like where we are with this Egyptian climate change accord, is people are going, reparations. I'm in a third world country that's never had any benefit. You're in the United States. You guys burned all the oil and caused all the problems. We didn't do any of that. We don't have any of the benefits. So we want you to pay us whatever commensurate a value is that you benefited from all these things. I think that's completely legit. Whoever figured that out, and it probably came from like Martin Luther King and reparations with slavery. I don't know any other way to do it. The problem is, it's really hard for somebody to write a check on profits they made 50 to 100 years ago. Anyway, that's the sum of it for me, is that blindness. And we just can't afford to be blind anymore.
I wonder so
that's what you can do, is not be blind.
What the percent of people that would willingly live with less if it was easier to live with less, right? You know what I mean?
Because right. It might actually be simpler.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like
technology
it's like
has a cost.
And okay, so like even like let's just say like somebody's like, oh yeah, I would love to, like grow my own food
or just give up meat.
Well, let's go with this. So let me just go with this. I want to grow my own food. I'm going to try to be as self-contained on my land as possible, right? Mm-hmm. But of course, so first of all, it's like, but I live in an apartment. Mm-hmm. Okay, so already that's the odds are stacked against me. Right. And then, how do I even get to having a yard, right? And of course, I mean, I know there can be community things, and maybe that is part of the answer. But it's like, I just think a lot more people probably would like to live a more simple life and earn their living
by working,
earn their survival,
totally.
survival, meeting their basic Maslow's needs by getting to really work on that stuff. Now, again, some people would probably be like, well, I'd rather go to a job and then play video games all day. Maybe you do.
Yeah, maybe you just haven't figured out that you don't.
Yeah, and you probably don't. And plus, like, if you're complaining about your job all the time, it's like that great little story about it's like like the guy, fisherman. Tourist was on vacation and the fisherman was out doing his like, you fish in the morning. Well, what do you do afternoon? Like, I go home and take a nap and hang out with my family and blah blah blah. Well, but if you got some more boats and did this and then it's like, well, why would I want to do all that? I'm just living my life, you know?
Totally.
So, but, you know, at the same time, too, though, it's like because of the societal systems that are in place, it's just not easy. It's not as easy to just break out of it as
of course
wanting
not.
to. you
But,
know?
and it always comes down to this, right? We can't change anything. The battleship is slow, blah, blah, blah. But we can.
Mm-hmm.
We totally can. And I think the pandemic showed us a little bit of how fast we can pivot. And
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, if we can freaking put like robots on Mars and videotape and take pictures of galaxies being born, and don't tell me we can't. Dude, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. What other element of life do we go, well, we just can't do that?
Yeah.
Except for this change thing.
Right. And that goes, you know, like the immediate argument now. It's like as soon as somebody says like a electric car, it's like, oh, well, the batteries and the...
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're right. But like what else is possible if we did it? And by the way, Exxon made $360 billion or whatever crazy number, you know, that they did.
And this may be my take home bullet point message that I have to develop later, but if, you know, we say we may not have known, right? We can't know everything. We can't go, no, the best solution to this energy crisis is nuclear, which is kind of where we're going now. Like my nephew says, you know, pretty soon we're going to have portable nuclear reactors in our houses that'll run our house. It'll just be this little box that produces nuclear power. And if anybody wants to invest in something in the future that's going to make money, I think it's that. Or something like that. I don't know what exists specifically. But we can't know. Like, we don't know. Maybe that's going to, like, make us all infertile. Like, one day we'll all wake up and no fertility in the human race is dead. We don't know. But we can't be responsible for that not knowing. But one indicator that I think we have that we can know the unknowns is if the differential in profit is greater than like 5 or 3 between the person making the thing and the company owning the thing. That is the indicator that we can look back at the past and go, what went wrong? There was this massive indicator in the person who makes a regular amount of money and how much money the other person was making. But that's what my take-home message from Egypt was.
Yeah.
Is look at this thing. How 10,000 men must have worked 20 years to make this. And then you go, who's the picture of? Oh, this guy that didn't do any of that?
Right.
That differential is the signal, right? That's the bat signal for the human race. When you see that, you go, whoa. It's really, you know, I haven't played that out. I haven't done the research. I'm just guessing that there's something to income inequality as a metric of how bad we're getting ready to screw things.
Yeah.
Or have already.
Right.
And I don't know if that comes to global values, like or not.
We get into global. I mean, I think so. It's that's.
But that's success run rampant, right?
Right.
I mean, somebody would say, no, that person is just 100,000 times more successful.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
They're not.
That's a
yeah. I mean, that's the fallacy of lifting yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah, hard
right?
work.
If you work hard work, right? I mean, there would be.
We'd all be like that.
People in tribes that walk miles a day for water or whatever, carried on top of their heads.
Well, and not to like beat, you know, like do all the talking here. But I'm getting ramped up. You don't look at a great white shark. You don't see one great white shark that's 450 feet long with 9 million teeth. You see narrow variation between each individual, and at the end of the day, the top 50, you know, like a race.
Yeah.
The top 50 finishers in the New York City Marathon are probably all within like seconds of each other. You don't get somebody finishing in 5 minutes, and then you know what I mean. The variation. So it's like there's a natural principle of variation. You know, where it huddles around some central tendency, or else the whole thing is out of whack. And so this idea that we can have dramatically varying levels of success is an indicator of poor health. You know, success ought to be, you know, clustered around a mean. Whoa.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming.
I mean, you're totally right. It is.
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, I look at nature and go, well, how has this happened for 50 million years? And why should what's happening now be any different than that? And when it is, you're like, uh-oh, this isn't sustainable. This is a train wreck.
Well, I think that's a key word there. Is it sustainable? Is this going
And
to
is
work?
that a global value?
Right.
Is sustainability a global value?
Yeah.
May
Well,
not be.
And it better be, probably, especially if you have kids and think that life should go on that way. I mean, just literally, life should go on. Life should go on.
Well,
so just stop there. If you think life should go on, full stop.
But see, that decision's already been made because life itself, an inherent trait of life, is the ability for it to go on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why I always go back again to nature. If it wasn't, then we wouldn't have sexual reproduction or cell division or mitosis or any of that stuff. Our stuff wouldn't die.
Right.
I mean, we're meant to.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I get fired up right about an hour.
Good. Well, let's talk about global values next time and sustainability. Maybe we'll start right there.
And reach out however you want to reach out. I think we actually have an email address.
Being better? No?
Yeah, is it beingbetterbeing@gmail.com? Something like that. Anyway, maybe I can share that in one of the show notes for anybody who's interested in
there you go.
contacting you and buying your book.
All right. Episode 20.